I don't ever want to be without an ARC system in my studio ever again. And when I say ARC system, I'm talking about IK Multimedia's Advanced Room Correction. No joke, the difference in monitoring sound between the pre-ARC and post-ARC eras in this studio is like night and day. And if you're wondering why, well, for the past 10 years I've been a bedroom producer, and I mean that in the most literal sense. There's my bed, here's my studio, it's all in the same room, and one of the hardest things to get right in a situation like this, well, it is getting the monitoring right. And one of the biggest helps I've had was actually just storing a bunch of junk on the other side of the room. If this is giving you anxiety, I do apologize. It gives me anxiety, but all of this stuff here actually fills a purpose. It breaks up sound waves, and it also works as a bass trap. And if I remove this, well, the reflectiveness of the walls and everything just makes the sound so much worse. So this is definitely helping. I also tried my hands at building a very bad sound absorber a few years ago, and I've made an entire video about that and how not to do it. Please don't go watch it. This is how you build a really bad sound absorber. And even though I've done all of that, I still had some problems with the monitoring situation in this room. But then, a few years back, everything changed in a very drastic way because IK Multimedia handed me a pair of their brand new iLoud MTMs. These were professional studio monitors with a built-in ARC system. And what they did for my listening experience here in this bedroom blew me away completely. And it's very much thanks to the built-in ARC system. That's one. But instead of keeping on with that story there, telling you what it was like with the MTMs, I'm going to show you the process with a new pair of speakers from IK Multimedia, the iLoud Micro Monitor Pros. So right off the bat, we can see that these new iLoud Micro Monitor Pros are bigger than the original iLoud Micro Monitors, but they're half the size of the MTMs. And when you look at the speaker elements in here, it's kind of like having half an MTM in each speaker. Now, the dope thing here is that these speakers have an ARC system in them. It's the same ARC system that you find inside the iLoud MTMs and also Precision series speakers. And I must say that I'm quite impressed with how good the Micro Monitor Pros really sound. Like half an MTM, even though there is a difference because these ones have the bass port on the front. And I've gotten used to having speakers with the bass port on the back. So there is a slight difference, but the Micro Monitor Pros sound great. Now, if we swing the speaker around, we can see that there are a bunch of buttons here, and this is something I do want to highlight because if you buy a pair of these speakers without an ARC microphone, you can still somewhat calibrate these speakers. IK Multimedia has done a lot of research into this, and they know that when you take a pair of speakers and you put them on a table, certain frequencies gets enhanced, usually around the lows, while other frequencies in the higher range gets suppressed or diminished. And so the desk mode actually adds two bell-shaped filters, which are here to offset that effect. Now, if that is not enough, then you have a high shelving filter set at 8 kHz, which can be pushed up 2 decibels or pushed down 2 decibels. And then you also have a low shelving filter set at 100 Hz, and this one can be pushed up 2 decibels or pushed down 3 decibels. Now, the last filter, called LF extension, is basically a high-pass filter, and it is here to filter out the really low sub. And in its default state, it's set to filter from 50 Hz and down. But it is switchable to a higher state, which is 80 Hz, and this is something you want to do if you decide to add a subwoofer to your system. Now, other than that, you have a volume knob, and then you have some inputs. You've got a USB-C input that you use to connect the speaker to a computer so that you can use it with the X-Monitor software, and this will allow you to upgrade the firmware in the speaker, and also it will allow the X-Monitor software to actually communicate with the speaker when it's doing the calibration with the ARC mic. Now lastly, there are two sound inputs, and here you need to choose. This is a digitally controlled speaker. It will select to listen to the input that is getting a signal. So you don't want to connect stuff to both of these inputs at the same time. And which one you use depends on what type of equipment you're connecting to. If you're using maybe a sound interface and or maybe a mixer with balanced outputs, you want to use the balanced inputs, the XLR inputs right here. However, if you want to connect your speakers directly to maybe a smartphone output or a laptop output, maybe even a Walkman, well, in those cases you can use the unbalanced RCA input. Now, you heard me say the word ARC a lot in this video, but I haven't really explained it, and I really want to, but I don't want to get too deep into the science of it. What I can say in layman terms is that the IK Multimedia Advanced Room Correction, or ARC for short, system is like an advanced filtering/equalizer, and it has the ability to adjust the frequency output of a speaker after analyzing how the speaker output behaves in a room/listening environment. Now, if there are any issues, which there usually is, then it will adjust for that. But it doesn't quite stop there. You see, whether it's instruments or microphones, IK Multimedia has always been good at emulating things. And that is a thing in the X-Monitor software too. It's called voice. And right now, the voice profile of my Micromonitor Pros is Micromonitor Pro, and it's giving me a flat response, as flat as you can get after the ARC system has analyzed my room and how the speakers behave and adjusted for it. And before the adjustment, there was some pretty boomy problems in here, but I don't have them now, and I'm super happy with it. But flat doesn't always suit your listening needs, and sometimes you want something else. And the cool thing here is that when we open up the menu, we can see that there's a wide range of different studio monitors, and there's even some consumer grade monitors here like TV monitors, and you can even emulate the speaker of a smartphone. And this is a super powerful tool for checking your mix in different types of speakers without actually, switching over to different types of speakers. However, I do want to add that this is truly a pro kind of tool. So if you're a beginner, listen to a lot of music in your speakers for at least a few months before messing around with this stuff. Now, the features don't really end there, because you can do even more. On top of the ARC calibration and the voice, you can do something called contour, and you can do it per speaker you want. Again, I would say this is a pro tool. Now, whenever you do a calibration, it actually gets stored inside the speakers, but you can of course save more on your hard drive. So if you happen to travel with your speakers and you ever find yourself going back to the same location, well, if you set everything up the same way like you did last time, you could just load that saved session and no need for calibrating again. Now, since I have some experience calibrating not just one pair of IKM ARC-powered speakers, but two, I thought it would be prudent of me to make a prep list. And it doesn't look like much, and the last point might not make much sense, but we're gonna go through them one by one. The first thing you need to think about is the placement of your speakers. You need to form a triangle with your head and your ears, and you need the elements in the speakers to actually be angled towards your ears. Now, you can mount the speakers on microphone stands, or you can place them on a table. In my case, I wanted to have them on the table here together with my MTMs. And in order to get the right height for them, I actually built a piece of furniture, a little shelf. So I bought myself a piece of glue lamp plank and then 4 little legs that I could adjust the height of, cut the plank to size, mounted the 4 legs, and voila, I had a new piece of furniture, and now I can actually hide stuff underneath it. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier. And also I have the speakers at the right height and right angle. Now, the room treatment is a bit more tricky, because one thing you want to try to avoid is a standing wave, and that is something you get when you have 2 straight angled walls opposite each other, because the sound will bounce on one wall and back, and then back, and it will keep going. You want to avoid those because they will mess with the sound. And one thing you can do is you can buy some sound treatment. You can have wall panels that are angled. You can angle your bookshelf like I've done here. This is not a straight angle. You can have pillars of junk in your room that interferes with waves. It all depends on what it sounds like in your room, and that's something you're gonna have to experiment with. And I do urge you to actually Google this and see how other people are trying to treat their rooms. All right, so third point, grab a roll of tape and calibrate. Why would you need tape? Well, it's for marking up microphone stand positions on the floor. You see, there are actually two ways of calibrating IK Multimedia ARC powered speakers. You can do the quick one from the speaker itself. And for this calibration, you're basically placing the microphone exactly where your head is supposed to be in that triangle. And you don't move the mic when you're doing the calibration with both speakers. However, when you're working with the X-Monitor software, it actually offers you a high precision calibration. And this requires you to move the microphone around. So let's get to calibrating. When you're mounting the ARC mic onto a microphone stand, make sure that this side here is pointing up towards the ceiling, and then you need it pointing straight ahead. Now, you also need to make sure that the microphone is as far away from the actual stand as possible, which is why my boom is protruding all the way out like this, because the stand itself can actually interfere with the calibration process. Now, when it comes to the ARC mic height, it needs to be the same height as your ears. So exactly like I'm showing you here, wearing my very, very nice Stetson hat. The next thing I did was basically connecting up the speakers to the computer, but I didn't connect both of them at the same time because then it would have been hard to know which one was on the left side and which one was on the right side. So I began with the left speaker, connecting that first, went into the software, and then made sure to select that one for the left side. And after that, I then connected the second speaker and selected that for the right side. Now, once that is done, we just need to decide which one we want to calibrate first, because that's the one we're going to connect the ARC mic to. So I began by connecting the XLR cable to the left speaker, and then I went down here and started up the calibration process for the left speaker. Now here, all you need to do is to follow instructions. Everything is well laid out, the graphical elements show you what you need to do, and everything is explained well enough. So if we click through here, we can see that we are going to have to move our microphone 4 times. So it begins like this. You place the microphone in this first position here, and then you press calibrate, and it sends out an impulse. Now, while it's doing this, you shouldn't do what I did in this clip and dance around like an idiot. No, you should be out of the way and not moving, and you should be very quiet. You want the room to be as quiet as possible so you're not interfering with the calibration process. Now, the program is going to highlight the next spot you need to sample. But before you move the mic, put down a piece of tape. And once you've done that, then you move the mic, put down another piece of tape. And you do the same thing. You click, you move out of the way, you try to be as quiet as possible, and then you move it to the next spot, and you do it again. It's a simple, repetitive process. Now, after you're done with the 4 measurement, it's going to take some time doing calculations and calibrate the speaker. And once that is done, it's going to save that calibration into the speaker. And you need to do the exact same process now, only with the second speaker. And now you're going to be happy that you actually marked out the microphone positions with tape, because it makes it easy for you to place the microphone in the same spots again. Now, when you're doing this, try to make sure that the actual boom with the mic on it is pointing straight ahead. Also make sure that your mic stand is tightened down if there are any nuts and bolts in there, because you don't want the boom dropping slowly over time while you're doing these measurements. The whole process might take you 10 minutes or maybe 15 minutes if you take it nice and slow. And once you're done, you can see the result of the calibrations in here. Everything in green is before the calibration, and the orangey ones are like after the calibration has adjusted the output. Now, like I said earlier, you can change the voicing and everything, but for any beginners out there, I would start out by just having the voicing being Micro Monitor Pro so you get a kind of a flatter response and then learn what your speaker actually sounds like in that room. My first thought was, I'm not sure how I'm gonna do this video, because when it comes to speaker taste, headphone taste, for me, that has always been a subjective thing. You see, I learned this the hard way back in the day when I got some advice from a professional studio engineer. He told me to buy a pair of high-end industry standard headphones. These were some of the best, everybody were using them. So I saved up my money, jumped on a bus, went to another town, to a store that actually carried those headphones, bought them, went back home, put them on, and I was blown away by how incredibly unimpressed I was. They sounded awful to me. Why? Because they were incredibly flat in their frequency response. So flat indeed that they had a dip in the bass area and I couldn't hear what I was doing with the bass. Now, I've always been into bass heavy music, so for several months I ended up mixing my bass so high that when I tried to play my music at a party, it sounded as if I had mixed my music through a potato. It was very embarrassing. I ended up selling those headphones and I bought a pair of different headphones, consumer grade headphones, and these ones had other issues. They had too much bass in them and they had a dip around 4,000 hertz, so a lot of the times there were sounds in my music that sounded too harsh, but the bass was easy to adjust for because now I could at least hear the bass. So the reason to why I'm telling you this is because I want to highlight how taste is subjective, especially when it comes to the kinds of synthesizers we like using and listening to, the ways we mix certain things, the kind of genres we like, and even the speakers we like to use. So why should you get a pair of Micro Monitor Pros then? Or maybe even MTMs? Well, the thing is, here you have a benefit of an ARC system. You have a way of dealing with issues in your listening environment that might mess up your sound even further. More than just buying a pair of speakers that might have the wrong curve in them. Here, you can take care of problems and adjust the curve. That is a very powerful tool to have access to. So for all of those reasons, getting a pair of speakers with an ARC system in them like this is a big, big plus. Now, the second thing I want to highlight here is that IK Multimedia speakers actually has a certain sound to them. And I know because I've been using their speakers for, I think, 8 years now. I have the second generation iLoud, the Micro Monitor Pros, and I also have the MTMs. Apart from the Micro Monitor Pros, the other ones I've had around for years. And the reason to why I like the IK Multimedia sound is that even though they try to go for a kind of flat frequency response, they still don't sacrifice bass completely, which is why I like them, because I need to be able to hear my bass when I'm working. So for that second reason, I also recommend these speakers. Now, finally, for those of you who might be satisfied with whatever you're having, you like the speakers you have, but you are intrigued by this ARC system, well, IK Multimedia sells this thing called ARC Studio. It's basically like a standalone box and an ARC mic, and you connect them to your existing speakers. And now you can calibrate them and you can change out their profiles and get all the benefits of the ARC Studio. So I have put a pinned comment down below in the comment section with links to all of these things that I'm talking about, and these are non-sponsored links. I wasn't paid to make this video and I don't earn anything from you going and buying stuff through these links. So I want to thank all of you for watching this video. I want to thank my patrons for still being around. Even though I've been a bit slow with my output of videos, there have been reasons for it, but I'm not going to bore you with the details in this video. I also want to thank IK Multimedia for continuously supporting me by sending me stuff like this so that I can review it. And as usual, I wish you all a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it.